So, today in continuing with How to Defend Against the Mongols by Kings and Generals. Sorry, I gotta check OBS. um, we are now what in the 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we're in the 5th part, and we're covering how the Koreans dealt with the Mongols and what interactions they had with them, which will be an interesting stepping point. We have covered a bit about how China dealt with the Mongols and how the Mongols interacted with the Japanese is very famous. Even I'm aware of that. Mongols attempts to take, Japan, but Korea kind of is in the center of that. So I'm very interested in finding out how they viewed the Mongols and what interactions they had with them. So, yeah, I don't really have much else to say other than, before I get started, I want to say, if you want to watch the original video, the link is down in the description down below. It's always the first link. And yeah, if you like my channel and want to help me out in any way, shape, or form, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. It would really help my small but humble channel grow, and I really would appreciate it a lot. With that said, and now without any further ado, let's get to it, shall we? Let's watch How to Defend Against the Mongols Part 5, Korea.
The conquest of China opened the road to Korea. The 13th century kingdom of Koryo, ruled by the House of Wang, had successfully resisted previous northern invasions by the Khitan Liao and Jurchen Jin, who had also fought as horse archers like the Mongols. Generally, the Koreans entered into beneficial tribute relationships with these states in order to maintain peace. After 1170, the Korean kings were reduced to figureheads, while military dictators acted as the de facto rulers of Korea. General Choi Chung-hon took power in the 1190s, beginning the military dynasty that would rule over Korea throughout the Mongol conquests. The 1211 Mongol invasion of the Jin Empire, Koryo's northern neighbor, brought unease to the peninsula. The Korean ambassador to the Jin was killed in the fighting, while new breakaway states and Jin deserters began to harass Korea's border at the Yalu River. In autumn 1216, several thousand rebelling Khitan horsemen blazed through the frontier. Skilled horse archers, the Khitans drove deep into Korea, menacing the capital, modern Kaesong. With effort, the Koreans halted their advance. Unexpectedly, in the winter of 1218, the Mongols sent some 30,000 troops into Korea with a simple message to the Koreans. They would crush the rebel Khitans. The Koreans would provide troops and supplies to assist with this, and then would pay tribute to the Great Khan. After a brief delay in answering, the Koreans acquiesced, sending 1,000.
Yeah, he did mention that last video when we covered, Korea's battle with the the Mongols' battle with the Song dynasty. That he did mention that the Mongols had kind of amassed various, Asian groups to help in their battle against the Song. And, he did mention that the Koreans were one of them. So a part of me was wondering if Korea was eventually subjugated or just kind of treated like a, I guess, sort of a vassal or like kind of like a ally. Like, I don't know. You get what I'm saying, right? So this is interesting to see for sure. And I guess the prospect of not being invaded but just having to give some troops is not too bad of a deal for the Koreans.
Picked troops and 1,000 bushels of rice. The rebel Khitans were crushed, and Korea began sending tribute to the Mongols in 1219. Korea's first Mongol experience was relatively peaceful. Though forced to send tribute, their cities had not suffered. The dictator Choi Chung-hon's advancing age, failing health, and desire to pass his rule onto his son stopped him from provocating. A keen observer, he had judged the danger of this new foe, expecting the relationship would differ little from Liao or Jin's tribute demands. Choi Chung-hon died in late 1219 and was succeeded by his oldest son, Choi-yu. A military man like his father and decisive leader, Choi-yu helmed Koryo for the next 2 decades. Choi-yu detested the Mongols' demands, especially for valuable otter skins, desired for their water-resistant properties. While Chinggis Khan was absent in Central Asia, his chief commander Makali had been left to maintain pressure on the Jin dynasty. With Makali's death in 1223 and a reduction in the Mongol military presence, the political situation changed dramatically. While the Jin made peace with their neighbors, a Mongol vassal kingdom in Manchuria, ruled by Pushanwanu, declared independence. He sought to ally with Koryo, which declined, but made their own moves. In 1225, the chief Mongol envoy to Korea mysteriously disappeared while transporting the annual tribute north. The Koreans insisted it was bandits, but the Mongols put the blame square on Koryo. Ugadai Khan was enthroned in 1229 and demanded both Pushanwanu and the Koreans be punished. Initially, the new Khan demanded Koryo aid in an attack against Wanu. With the failure of the Koreans to comply, Ugadai ordered an invasion of the peninsula.
With Google Play,
the first of 6 Mongol invasions. Led by Sartak Kochi,
oh my goodness. Yeah, that was an interesting situation that increased the hostilities, the lost tribute and then all that. That was interesting. Let me get that again. I want to get that again.
the Mongols put the blame square on Koryo. Ugadai Khan was enthroned in 1229 and demanded both Pushanwanu and the Koreans be punished. Initially, the new Khan demanded Koryo aid in an attack against Wanu. With the failure of the Koreans to comply, Ugadai ordered an invasion of the peninsula, the first of 6 Mongol invasions.
6, as in, wow.
Led by Sartak Kochi, the army crossed the Yalu River in autumn 1231. The attack was overwhelming. Koryo's armies were annihilated in the field, and Kaesong surrounded. Yet there was notable resistance at a few fortified cities, especially Kuju. Famed for a victory over the Khitans in 1018, in late 1231 through early 1232, under the command of Pak So, the city withstood weeks of assault. The most famous event occurred early in the siege. The southern wall of the city was defended by Kim Kyong-son and a skilled unit of Pyeolcho, translated as Defense Command Patrol, Extraordinary Watches, or Night Patrol. These were local troops from outside the regular army, an elite militia specializing in guerrilla warfare. Sending most of the unit inside the city, Kim Kyong-son led a group of 12 picked men before the south gate. Telling them not to think of their lives and accept death as their fate, Kim and his men withstood 4 or 5 Mongol charges, girding the city to further resistance.
Wow.
Attacks were launched on the walls day and night. The Mongols pushed carts of dry grass and wood to the gates to burn them, only to be destroyed by Korean catapults. A tower built before the walls to protect sappers was destroyed when the Koreans dug holes through their own walls to pour molten iron onto it. 15 large catapults were driven off by the Korean counter-artillery. Scaling ladders were toppled by Korean polearms. Bundles of sticks.
Impressive resistance, especially like I said, Korea, I mean most kingdoms and places are the underdog when facing the Mongols. But yeah, essentially, especially like Korea in this instance, and the fact that they're like still putting up a great resistance is actually beyond admirable. And this is cool, like I said. We haven't really touched on Korea. We covered Admiral Yi. That's about it. That is about it. We've only covered that one man in Korean history, so everything about learning about Korea is completely new to me, which I find really interesting. You know, between this and also their resistance against the Japanese, like they are situated in such an interesting place between China, between Japan, and you know, kind of having to like deal with both in some sense. I don't know. I think its situation compared to these very other powerful you know, empires and kingdoms at times seems like it's not the most advantageous, but it is still cool to see them resist and fight back. Again, like I'm actually kind of impressed right now.
Soaked allegedly in human fat, set aflame and hurled into the city, could not be put out with water. but the crafty Koreans smothered them with mud and earth. Another catapult team made 50 breaches in the walls, which the defenders filled as they were made. After a month of terrible destruction but no success, the siege was lifted, the Mongols declaring the city was protected by heaven. Military ruler Chou came to terms with the Mongols in January 1232, and was so frustrated that Kuju had continued to resist that he wanted to have its commanders, Pak So and Kim Kyong-son, executed, fearing that their defiance would provoke Mongol retaliation. Here the Mongols interceded, saying, "Although he went contrary to our orders, he is a loyal subject of yours. We're not going to kill him now that you've already pledged peace with us. Would it be proper to kill the loyal subjects of all your cities?"
Yeah, that was... You think the Mongols would gain from getting rid of them, but even they're like, nah, bro, just leave them be. That's insane. Yeah, like what we covered with the Admiral Yi series by Extra History, how sometimes at least in that series, the Korean government kept trying to shoot itself in the foot by demoting Admiral Yi and, you know, getting rid of that. So I'm not sure that was like a common theme in all of Korean history, but like you seen it for a second there, he wanted to get rid of some very capable defenders. But apparently they were saved by the enemy, the Mongol. That's unique. That's a unique situation right there. Dang, the Mongols being the voice of reason is in this situation is kind of funny.
Still, Koryo had submitted to Sartak Korchi in the first month of 1232. The tribute demands were massive. 20,000 horses, 20,000 otter skins, slaves, royal hostages, and clothing for 1 million men were demanded, alongside gold, silver, and other treasures.
Imagine being able.
Appointing overseers, Sartak withdrew his forces, considering the peninsula conquered. The Koreans were less keen to comply. The demands were onerous. While Koryo sent much in gifts, it was unwilling to send royal hostages, and could barely produce 1,000 otterskins. By the summer of 1232, Chou moved king and court from Kaesong to Kanghwa Island under naval protection.
Smart.
Mongol officials in Korea were murdered, and the peninsula was in open revolt. Sartak returned in the fall of 1232, blazing a trail of destruction across the country's northern half until he was killed during a siege by a Buddhist monk turned archer, Kim Yun-hoo.
Oh wow.
On Sartak's death, the Mongol army withdrew. As Chou ably predicted, the Mongols' lack of navy would stop them from being able to get the royal court into their hands by force. The Mongols were not done with Korea. The defection of one Korean...
Yeah, that was a great resistance right there. Like I said, they're very scrappy, the Koreans in this situation, and not so easy to put under the thumb. And again, like that moving of the royal court to the, you know, to the island was a genius move, especially since the Mongols, hadn't gotten the necessary, mainly a land-based horse archer army, so trying to utilize the advantage of a navy is just a great move on their part, you know?
Commander Hong Pogwan gave them control of the land north of Pyongyang, which Hong was made the overseer of. The next attack came in summer of 1235, after the conquest of North China. This campaign, led by Tangut Ba'ata, was hugely destructive. With the assistance of Hong Pogwan, by winter of 1236, he had penetrated some 470 kilometers into Korea. The Koreans could not field armies against them, and alternative strategies were developed to respond. Just as the court had fled to Kanghwa Island, most of the population outside of fortified settlements fled to coastal islands or mountain refuges to escape Mongol riders. Offensives were limited to guerrilla warfare, Pyulcho units launching surprise night raids, ambushes through mountain passes, and striking small parties. Hitting quickly and hard and using local terrain, these small units were more mobile than even the Mongols.
Wow.
It was a frustrating way of war for the Mongols, and destructive.
Okay, so this is an interesting development inside we haven't seen for the Mongols, them struggling because the Koreans are utilizing again, great resistance in their sieges, but also kind of like, yeah, guerrilla warfare, you know? Um, Picking them off, not giving them a pitched battle. That's smart. Yeah, very much like Napoleon in Spain or the US in Vietnam, right? Um, when a great like empire or nation is kind of being bogged down by a smaller one simply due to, um unorthodox ways of fighting or fighting in a way they're not used to. So again, wow. Good on Korea on this one.
Increased when they got frustrated. Fortified settlements were left to fend for themselves, and when they did fall, the destruction was horrific. The countryside was ravaged, and the death toll was horrendous. The guerrilla tactics harassed but could not stop the Mongols, who could not bring the country to submission. Korean defections to the Mongols were enormous. By winter 1238, the Korean court was willing to come to talks with the Mongols to halt the destruction.
Writing a book is hard.
As the Koreans feared, Mongol demands were stiff. Alongside the expected tribute, the Mongols required a census and for the Korean king Kojong to present himself to the Mongol court at that time. For the military ruler Choiu, this presented an issue. His legitimacy rested on his control of the king. Mongol demands would remove him from power. Peace on Mongol terms could not be accepted as long as the Choes wanted to remain in control. For 2 years, the Koreans made excuses not to send the king until a distant relation was made up to be the crown prince and sent to the Mongol capital of Karakoram in 1241. The Mongols found out about the deception 14 years later.
Oh, wow.
By then, he was a loyal member of the Mongol court and even married the daughter of Great Khan Mung-ke. With the royal hostage and resumption of tribute, Choiu achieved a 6-year truce. The Mongols still wanted the royal court to return to the mainland though, and their envoys grew ever more insistent on the matter. Choiu spent the next 6 years building elaborate fortifications on Kanghua Island and readying militia units, while consecrating Buddhist projects like the Tripitaka Koreana to secure heavenly favors. In autumn 1247, the new Khan, Guyuk, ordered another attack under Amukan and Hongpogwan. Again, the countryside was abandoned for coastal islands and mountain fortresses. Guerrilla attacks were launched, and the northern half of the peninsula was desolated. The deaths of Khan Guyuk in summer 1248 and Choiu in winter 1249 brought a relative calm. Choiu was succeeded by his son, Chuehang, not the equal of his father or grandfather. More arrogant and hasty than his father, he struggled to maneuver the complicated politics of Koryo and Mongol attacks, and within months he faced coup attempts. In 1251, Mung-ke was confirmed as Great Khan. Again, envoys demanded the Korean king visit the Mongol court and abandon Kanghua Island. Again, excuses were made. King Kojong was too old and sickly for such a trip, but the Koreans suggested sending the crown prince again, while preparing for the expected invasion. By 1252, Mong-ke sent Prince Yeku into Korea in August 1243 alongside Amukan and Hongpogwan. Mongol envoys announced that King Kojong had 6 days to comply and meet Mongol representatives on the mainland.
My goodness.
Though the king actually met with Mongol envoys on the straits across from the island, it achieved nothing. Once more, Mongol forces were unleashed on the peninsula, while the people fled to their hideouts. Pyeolcho raids attacked Mongol parties, and Mongols destroyed the cities which fell to them. Yeku was held up and fell ill during the long siege of Cheongju, ably defended by Kim Yun-hu, the same Buddhist monk who had killed Sartak some 20 years prior. Ultimately, Mung-ke recalled Yeku before the end of the year due to his feuding with another prince. Amukan and Hongpogwan continued the campaign for a few more weeks, organizing a brief effort at amphibious warfare. 7 captured Korean ships landed Mongol troops on Kal Island in early 1254, to no great result. Amukan pulled the troops back in spring, returning in August with reinforcements under Jalayitai Kochi, with more demands for submission that went unheeded. Early in the summer of 12...
Yeah, they just keep imposing these demands and they'll never fully be meted. Which is hilarious, I think. And it's just this, it's kind of becoming this trend now, like, we want demands, the Koreans either won't or can't fully meet it. They jump in, raid a bit, leave, and then it's just this cycle that keeps happening over and over again.
55, Jaliutai and Amikan fell back to the northern border. By then, aside from years of destruction and abandonment of farmland, the peninsula was also in the midst of an ongoing drought. In the first year of Jaliutai's command in Korea, an estimated 206,800 persons were taken captive. The suffering was horrific. Jaliutai's forces attacked again in autumn 1255, beginning a shipbuilding program. Frustrated with the continued resistance, the Mongols were considering assaulting the well-defended Kanghua Island. A sense of Jaliutai's frustration is evident in his response to the Korean envoys in mid-1256. The envoys came asking for peace and Mongol withdrawal, to which Jaliutai, incensed with Pyeolcho attacks in the night, snapped, "If you desire peace and friendship, then why do you kill our soldiers in great numbers?"
Everybody PG.
Jaliutai's withdrawal in the autumn of 1256 was no respite. Famine gripped even Kanghua Island. When Jaliutai returned in the spring, it must have been apparent that the Choe's were hanging on by a thread.
Yeah, certainly.
Choe Hang soon died, succeeded by his son Choe Wei, who proved a very poor choice. His attempts to win favor by grants of food to the populace and court did not offset bad advisors enriching themselves and his own poor decisions. Alienating just about everyone in the court, the pressure of the situation finally led to a coup. Officers led by Kim In-jun assaulted Choe's palace in May 1258. Choe Wei tried to escape over the walls, but was too fat to get himself over. Caught by the assassins,
no.
Choe Wei's death ended 6 decades of Choe military rule in Korea.
Dang.
Gaining the support of the elderly Kojong and handing out the wealth of the Choe's, Kim In-jun made himself the new military governor. However, his position was much weaker than the Choe's had been, and he still refused to submit to the Mongols. Mongol envoys, who arrived in the summer of 1258, brought threats that they would storm Kanghua Island, and in August, Jaliutai received further reinforcements. Refusal to supply either the crown prince or the king was met with unchecked destruction across the Korean peninsula. If the royal court did not come to them, the Mongols would impose direct rule. No matter how bloody the Pyeolcho attacks were, they could not stop the Mongols. Resistance.
They really want that royal court to appear before them, man. That has been the most consistent and biggest issue so far in this later part. Man. And they just keep saying, no. We don't wanna. But essentially, right? Dang.
Broke in 1259.
I think that's what's interesting. They do want peace, the Koreans, but they're not willing to actually fully, like, commit to everything that the Mongols says, which is creating this trend, this loop of just continual raids and war. It's like, it's funny, they'll be like, yeah, we want peace, but we will not comply with literally every one of your demands, which in turn, as they would know, obviously, logically, would create another war. So in a way, it's more, it feels like they're just more asking for ceasefires and actual peace, in a sense, you know?
Revolts against military rule began across the country, and towns and cities surrendered on the arrival of the Mongols, rather than continue fighting. With food supplies exhausted, their military forces ground nearly to dust, in the spring of 1259, a peace deal was reached. The Crown Prince, Wang Chon, was to travel to the Mongol court as a royal hostage. The court moved back to the mainland, and the defenses of Kanghua were demolished. Kim In-jun was not removed, but his power was considerably lesser than that of the Choe's. Organized Koryo resistance to the Mongol Empire was over. In May 1259, Prince Wang Chon set out for the imperial court, and inadvertently became the first foreign ruler to recognize Kublai as the next great Khan of the empire. In turn, Kublai provided Wang Chon with an armed escort to return to Korea and be installed as the new king, as the venerable Kojong had died in July 1259. Kojong had reigned through the entire Mongol-Korean War, and fittingly, he died only weeks after it ended.
Wow.
Wang Chon, known better by his temple name, Wonjong, proved a loyal vassal to Kublai Khan, marrying his son and eventual successor to one of Kublai's daughters. Military rule in Korea ended in 1270, after a series of assassinations and rebellions, and the Korean court finally returned to the mainland. With that, Koryo was a fully incorporated client kingdom. The king ruled in earnest, though with Mongol backing. When briefly ousted by a coup, Kublai's forces came in and reinstalled him. Yet Mongol demands upon Korea did not grow any less burdensome. Wonjong had to mobilize the Koreans for another war, this time fighting alongside the Mongols. Korean ships, food supplies, and men were needed by Kublai Khan against the island of Japan, which had spurned his demands for submission. Korea was to be a launch pad for the first Mongol invasion of Japan in 1274.
Yeah, the Mongol invasions of Japan are legendary, and probably one of the more talked about ones in history in regards to the Mongols. And we're going to be covering them tomorrow, so I'm really looking forward to that. So yeah, guys, I'll end the video right here, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye, everyone.